So as we just heard, President Lee presided over the UN Security Council's open debate, becoming the first South Korean leader to chair a session at the council. For more on this, we're joined today by Dr. Schattle, Professor of Political Science at Yonsei University. Professor Schattle, thanks for joining us this morning.
Hi, Angie. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So today's debate mainly focused on the emerging threats of artificial intelligence. What's your overall assessment of President Lee's message during the debate?
I thought strategically it was an important and really interesting theme to emphasize, Angie. I mean, we all know, of course, that AI is an important security issue globally, worldwide. It's something that faces all humanity in fairly equal terms. It's not something that's divided in groups of countries. There is a need, I think, as the president said, for a human-centric AI, one that humans can flourish and be enriched by as being controlled or dominated by. So the speech does call attention, I think, to that larger context that AI can either be enriching or disruptive, actually. And it also is fairly consistent, I think, if you're thinking about this from a domestic politics point of view or domestic economics point of view. It's an area where South Korea might also have some competitive advantage, too, on the technological side and on the diplomatic side. Last year, predating the Lee administration, South Korea hosted a summit that was themed on the responsible use of AI in the military domain. So there's a whole variety of areas that are of interest, I think, and not just to the Lee administration, but also, as we can see, across Korean society. So that was projected within this meeting today, I thought, in interesting ways.
Right, absolutely. And President Lee became the first South Korean president to preside over the UN Security Council meeting. This comes as South Korea assumes the presidency of the council. What significance does this carry?
Right. It was fortuitous for President Lee, I think, in this case. The presidency, as you may know, rotates month by month. And it's not often that a country, at the same time as it's rotating into the presidency, manages to also have that coincide with the UN General Assembly annual sessions in September, where the world leaders all descend on New York. So it was actually just very lucky timing, I think, for Lee Jae-myung to have that rotation coincide. So a very long way for somebody who was the mayor of Seongnam not so long ago, primarily a local and provincial politician who's moved up very quickly, and here he is on the world stage. So kind of meteoric rise for Lee Jae-myung. Part of that personal drama and symbolism, I think, was very much on display today.
Right, and speaking at the UN General Assembly before that debate, President Lee also said he'll ease tensions with North Korea. What's your take on his initiative? And with Kim Jong-un recently hinting at sort of willingness to meet with Donald Trump, do you think we will see Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump meet again as they did in Trump's first term in office?
Right, Angie. This is the cliffhanger. And of course, this goes back to President Lee Jae-myung's speech at the full General Assembly, as well as some statements he was making earlier in an interview to the BBC at the beginning of the week. So as we all know, Kim Jong-un has shunned diplomacy with South Korea as well as the United States ever since the summits that took place in the first Trump presidency several years ago ended up not producing any kind of agreement. And Kim has gone more in the direction of Vladimir Putin from Russia and Xi Jinping from China of late. He met with both of those not long ago. And the question now that Kim Jong-un said at the beginning of this week that he's interested now or has good memories of talking to Trump and is willing perhaps to have another chat with Trump, provided, though, that the U.S. drop the demand of denuclearization of North Korea's nuclear weapons program. And that's been South Korean policy as well. So President Lee said at the beginning of this week that he would be receptive to having a cap on North Korea's nuclear weapons program, or kind of freeze, basically, on its program, rather than denuclearization in the near term. And the goal of denuclearization could be pushed back to a longer-term objective. And this also came out in his speech at the UN this week. President Lee was speaking, as you see in the video there. So the U.S. side has not yet weighed in on this. We can kind of surmise that President Trump might be eager to have a round of diplomacy again with Kim Jong-un. President Trump, in his speech at the UN General Assembly, made it, I think, very clear. He said he didn't care about a Nobel Peace Prize, but he seems to be looking for any way that he could pick one up. So I'm sure that President Trump will be considering the possibility, at least, of having a meeting with Kim Jong-un sometime soon. And President Lee Jae-myung seems willing to think about adjusting the policy, but that would be a very big step. Pushing denuclearization further back and having that kind of talk with North Korea would be, in a sense, making a very big concession to North Korea. That's a concession that was not made the last time the U.S. and North Korea had the earlier round of summits in the first Trump presidency. So I think South Korea and the U.S. really have to think further about what they want to ask from North Korea as a precondition for talks, and then figure out how those talks might develop from there. So there'll be a lot of behind-the-scenes negotiations, and we'll see how the U.S. chooses to play with the cards that it may be dealt with.
Right, we'll have to see how that goes. All right, Dr. Schattle, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your time and insight. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you for having me, Yunji. Take care.